Restaurant was silent for a moment, the kind of silence that feels like the air itself is holding its breath. All eyes turned toward the tall man in the navy Armani suit, who had just slammed his palm on the counter. "Do you people even know who I am?" he barked, his voice echoing off the marble walls. But no one expected what would happen next, because in that very moment the young waitress, trembling, tired, and wearing an old apron that had seen better days, looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Yes, I know exactly who you are. You used to be one of us?" An employee. And in that instant, the billionaire's confident smirk vanished. His face went pale, as if she had ripped open a part of his past he had buried long ago. If this hook caught your heart, hit that like button, share where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to Exposed Tales, where every story reveals what's hidden behind power, pride, and truth. It was a rainy evening in New York City. The Silver Leaf, a high-end restaurant overlooking Central Park, glittered like a diamond under the stormy sky. Inside, the aroma of truffle butter and vintage wine mingled with the low hum of violins. The guests here were not ordinary. CEOs, actors, and political figures often came to dine in private booths draped with velvet curtains. Tonight, however, the staff buzzed with unusual tension. A billionaire investor named Damien Cross had booked the restaurant for a VIP dining experience, and he was known for being impossible to please. Damien was the kind of man who measured worth in dollars and respect in servitude. He had risen from a small-town mechanic's son to one of the richest real estate moguls in America. But in the process, he had forgotten what humility felt like. His sharp jawline, designer watch, and meticulously combed hair were all part of the armor he wore to remind the world that he was untouchable. As he entered the restaurant, his assistant hurried behind him, carrying files, his phone, and a constant look of fear. "Table ready." Damien snapped before even sitting. The manager, a man twice his age but half his confidence, bowed slightly. "Yes, sir, your private booth is prepared." "May I?" said VIP. Damien interrupted coldly. "I don't want to see a single person near my table except my server, and make sure whoever you send knows what service means." The manager nodded nervously and signaled to a waitress who had been quietly polishing glasses behind the counter. Her name was Alina Carter, a 26-year-old working double shifts to pay for her mother's hospital bills. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the billionaire's table. She wasn't intimidated by money. She was just exhausted, emotionally and physically. But tonight her quiet endurance was about to collide with a storm. "Good evening, sir," Elena said softly. "Would you like to start with some wine?" Damien barely looked at her. "Only the 2012 Shah 2 Margox. If you don't know what that is, ask someone who does." Alina nodded, biting her tongue. She had served arrogant customers before, but something about Damien's eyes made her heart ache. There was pain behind his cruelty, though he hid it well beneath the layers of pride. When she brought his wine, Damien waved his hand dismissively. "You're too slow. In my company, people like you wouldn't last an hour." Something in Elena snapped. She looked at him, really looked, and said quietly, "I think I know what company you're talking about." Damien frowned. "Excuse me." Elena took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving his. "You worked for Westwood Diner, right? In Brooklyn. You were a busboy. I used to see you there when I was in college. You cleaned tables for tips." The glass in Damien's hand froze midair. For a second, his eyes flickered with recognition and disbelief. You must be mistaken," he stammered. But she wasn't, and everyone could tell. The restaurant fell silent again. Even the violins seemed to stop playing. The billionaire who demanded VIP treatment was now being stripped of his illusions. Not by power, but by truth. Elena's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of dignity. "You used to smile when customers left change on the table. You said one day you'd own a place like this, and now you do. Congratulations. But somewhere along the way you forgot what it felt like to earn respect, not demand it." Damien's chest tightened. Memories he had buried long ago came flooding back. Greasy aprons, 16-hour shifts, the smell of coffee, and the humiliation of being ignored by people who thought they were better. He had promised himself he'd never feel small again. But now, in front of this quiet waitress, he felt smaller than ever. The rest of the night went on like a scene from a silent movie. Damien didn't shout again. He didn't even eat. He just sat there, staring into his untouched glass of wine, haunted by the reflection of who he once was. Later, when the restaurant emptied, he found Elena outside, waiting for her bus in the rain. Without his entourage or his tailored confidence, he approached her quietly. "You were right," he said, his voice soft and broken. "I forgot." Elena looked up, surprised. "Forgot what?" How to be human. He took off his coat and handed it to her. When I left that diner job, I told myself that money would erase the shame of being poor. But it didn't, it just made me blind. For the first time in years, Damien's voice cracked. The billionaire facade crumbled, revealing a man who was once kind, ambitious, and good-hearted, before pride turned him into a stranger. Elena smiled gently. Then maybe it's time to remember. You don't need to impress people to matter. You just need to make things right. Something shifted in Damien that night. The next morning, he returned to his company and announced a new initiative, a fund for struggling service workers, waiters, janitors, and cleaners. The very people he once looked down upon. He raised their salaries, offered scholarships, and started personally visiting restaurants to thank the staff who made others feel special. And when news outlets asked what inspired the change, Damien simply said, "A waitress reminded me who I was before I became what I thought I wanted to be." Before we close this powerful story, if this moment touched your heart, take a second to like, comment, and subscribe to Exposed Tales. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that reveal the humanity behind pride and the strength behind humility. Months later, Damien returned to Silver Leaf. This time, he didn't demand a thing. He stood in line like everyone else, smiled at the hostess, and waited patiently. When Elena approached, surprised to see him, he simply said, "Table for one, please, and make it anywhere you like." She smiled, leading him to a corner booth. As he sat, he noticed something different about the air, lighter, peaceful, almost forgiving. He no longer needed the world to bow before him. When Elena brought him his meal, Damien looked up with sincere gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly. She nodded, her eyes warm. "You're a welcome, employee." He laughed, the sound genuine for the first time in years. And under the soft glow of the restaurant lights, a billionaire remembered how it felt to be a man again. Humble, flawed, and free. Respect is not measured by wealth or power. It's earned by kindness, humility, and how we treat those who serve us. Because no matter how high we rise, the ground we stand on was once built by the hands we often overlook.